All right, class. So first up, as always, good day. Today, what we're going to be talking about are two important books, The Divine Comedy and Canterbury Tales. And then we're going to be talking about the authors of those books and the impact they had, and also about Martin Luther. Okay. So before we begin, make sure that you have either the packet, and if you don't have the packet, make sure you have some line paper for your notes so you can take them. And if you do have the line paper, be sure you put on the side warm up notes, question, answer, things like that. Okay. That helps me to see where you wrote the stuff. Okay. So without further ado, let us begin. Okay. So here is your warm up picture. Now remember, this is the video, so you can pause it, go back, things like that. Okay, go at your own pace. Now, here is the warm-up picture. First question is, what do you see? Okay, create a list. What do you see? Different things in this picture. Look at the background, look at the stuff in the front, things like that. Um, Also, the second part of the question is, what do you think is going on? So again, analyze this picture, really look at it, put the things that you notice, put them together, and then um, basically come with a conclusion. What is this picture saying? What is this artist, what is they trying to say? Okay, so again, go through this picture, really look at it, and give your opinion. All right, so here's the thing. During the medieval time, a lot of the former stuff that was taught in the Greek and Roman era was basically forgotten. Not completely, but it was forgotten for the majority of the people. Because you have to remember, the class system was the peasants were down here, then like the knights, nobles, kings. Okay, so a lot of the upper people, they still were taught some of the old Roman and Greek stuff, but the peasant people, which calculated for a large portion of the population, didn't learn any of this stuff. Okay, so all they were basically learning was how to work the fields. That was it, just straight work. That's all they knew. So a new wave of humanism came up, and this was a study of classic Greek and Roman literature. This was a study of grammar, rhetoric, poetry, moral philosophy, excuse me, and history. Okay, all those subjects are very important when it comes to how we should look at our lives and how can we improve it. All right. Now, uh, there is this thing called, I'm going to kill this, but it's Petrarch, and this was set in motion with the Italian Renaissance, the Humanism movement. And basically, they were looking for lost Latin manuscripts. All right. They were trying to bring back the old form of Latin, the pure Latin as they called it. So if you look to your right, you will see some examples of Latin. Up on the top, Veni, Vidi, Vici, that was Julius Caesar's famous saying, I came, I saw, I conquered. Um, if you look at the bottom, basically where the video camera thing of me is, it says carpe, and the part that's blocked it says diem. Carpe diem means seize the day. Okay, and I'm sure you guys kind of know that stuff from that YOLO. You only live once. Basically, that was the YOLO back in the day. Carpe diem, seize the day. Don't let it go to waste. Do something with your day. Make your day worthwhile. Make it worth something. Okay. All right. So there's a thing called vernacular. Now, vernacular is basically language that is spoken in a certain region. So think of it like it's hard to imagine now because like people speak English everywhere around the world. But back in the day, in let's say France, people only spoke French in France. There weren't French-speaking people in like Africa or Asia or Russia. They basically um, stuck to that area. Maybe in the surrounding areas, yeah, but it was in an area. Um, so this pertained to Italians, French, German, English, things like that. But there were two authors that made vernacular literature very popular, and both of them wrote stories that were just mind blowing, just wow. One of them was Dante, the other one was Chaucer. Now, both of them wrote um, their books, their most popular books, are long, long poems. All right, so we're going to start off with Dante. Now, his masterpiece, and it is truly a masterpiece, was called the Divine Comedy. It's also known as Dante's Inferno. Okay, so if you look at the picture to your right, you will see the layers of hell. Okay, and there's limbo, lust, gluttony, greed, anger, heresy, violence, fraud, and treachery. Um, and if you read the story, it goes through each section. It explains what happens to each soul in every level. It's pretty good. Um, Basically, this guy Dante goes on a journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven, also known as paradise. And again, it scared people, because you have to remember a lot of the people back then, especially the peasants, they didn't know any better. All they knew was go to work, you go to church. Go to work, you go to church. There wasn't much time to explore, to learn, and things like that because they were kept dumb. So when they hear about this book that basically says if you commit this sin, you're going to be in this layer of hell, and this is going to happen to you. For example, lust, right? And in that punishment, you are circling. Your soul is circling violent winds, and people are trying to grab onto rocks, trying to hold on to anything for a second because they're constantly moving left and right, and they're hitting rock, they're hitting this, and they're constantly moving left and right in every which way possible, up and down. It's because their lust in life swept them. So in death and in the afterlife, they're going to be swept all around. And that one was pretty good chapter. If you get to read it, I'd highly recommend it. Pretty interesting stuff. Now the other person was Chaucer, and Chaucer used English vernacular for his work in its amazing story. If you get to read it, it's called the Canterbury Tales. Now the thing is, this story basically has 29 stories. For a second, I thought it was 27, but it's actually 29 of travelers, and they're talking about why they're going to the Canterbury town and things like that, and to visit the tomb of Saint Thomas. And again, the way it's written, it's very good, and it makes people think, and it scares people. It's one of those things of literature that really gets to the soul of people especially at that time, because they didn't know any better, you know, and it just scared them to death. All right, so for your midpoint question, here it is. Why do you think the book, The Divine Comedy, convinced people to live a more pure life? Because again, you have to remember, take into context the time. A lot of people back then were not educated. They didn't know any better. Basically, work, go to church, and basically all they had, really, that they could claim as theirs was their soul. That was it. So here's this book saying, if you don't, if you commit these sins, this will be your punishment in the afterlife. So why do you think this book made people want to live a more pure life? Okay, so think about it, right? Again, if this is the recording, so you can pause it, take your time, think about it. To start it off, the prompt is on the bottom, to help you out. I believe that the book Divine Comedy convinced people to live a more pure life because, and give your opinion. Okay, again, base it off some facts, back it up. Okay, um, so there it is for the midpoint question. All right, so now we're going to move on to Martin Luther. Now, when I say Martin Luther, I don't mean Martin Luther King, the first Martin Luther, no King part at the end. Now, this guy was the creator of the Protestant Reformation movement. All right, now the reason and the why he did this all started when the Catholic Church gave this guy, Johann Titzel, complete authorization in England. Now, this guy, Johann, what he did was he tried to collect money to build St. Peter Basilica in Rome. Right, so he needed money. Now, instead of asking for donations, things like this guy went a little shady, and he basically did a big no-no. All right, what he did is he told people that if they gave money, that their relatives would be free from purgatory and they could move on to heaven. Now, again, I know this may not seem like a big thing, but back then this was huge. Basically, you could pay for someone to go to heaven, one of your relatives. So think of somebody you care about the most, whether it's your grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, brother, sister, whomever. Now, imagine if someone told you, oh, yeah, they're in purgatory, they're not in heaven, they're not in hell, they're right in the middle. But if you pay, let's say $500, then I can guarantee you your whomever is going to heaven because you flipped the bill. And some people were like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. Heck yeah, I can pay that. But there were a lot of poor people who could not. So they're like, well, I thought that's what we were praying for those people's souls to go to heaven. Um, so are you saying that my prayers are worthless? That if I pay, that someone can go to heaven? Is that what you're trying to tell me? And this particular thing really upset Martin Luther because he's like, no, you should not just go to heaven because you're rich. You should do it because you lived a good life, you have a good soul, you're a believer, things like that. So he wrote down the 95 Thesis and he nailed it to a wall on to the church door. And that's the picture you see to your right. And it pointed out the abuses that the Catholic Church has done to the people. All right. Now, the thing is, this spread fast, right? Because back then, before we have like now, with like the internet and stuff like that, where you can simply take a picture and just forward it, people had to write it by hand. But there was a new invention that came out called the printing press. And the printing press made copying a document a lot faster and it could spread faster. And that's exactly what happened in this case.